Well, greetings, American Lit friends. Today we're going to talk about the good old research paper guidelines. Fun, fun. So, to follow along with me, go to content up at the top of our Brightspace page, and then go to the table of contents, and you'll see in the left-hand sidebar research paper guidelines and materials. And I, by the way, have offered there some other important resources for you. And you'll click on Research Paper Guidelines, English 2120, Fall 2021. So for this assignment, and it's a big one, you'll submit a well-researched essay exploring in depth an American text. Note, it must be American. It could be either poetry or fiction that is representative of one of the time periods or genres that we're studying this semester. So it might be an example of realism, of local color realism, of naturalism, of African American lit of the late 19th, early 20th century. It might be an example of early 20th century poetry or imagism, early 20th century prose, drama even of the 20th century, Harlem Renaissance writings, later 20th century prose, excuse me, or later 20th century poetry. So you may, if you wish, choose readings that are actually listed on our class syllabus as your chosen text. So you can choose something we've read together, or something we will be reading together before the end of the semester. Alternatively, you may choose a text not listed on our syllabus. The choice is yours, but you must choose a text written by an American author within the time period of our Modern American Lit class. So from 1865, the end of the Civil War, to the present, right? It has to be within that time frame, written by an American. So here are the important dates. Week 9, we're going to hold our idea workshop for the research paper. So you'll complete answers to some idea worksheet questions that I'll give you that sort of will begin to help you generate your thinking and your ideas for this research paper. So to access the idea worksheet, click on Content, Research Paper Guidelines and Materials again, and then look for Idea Worksheet for the research paper to read the worksheet questions. And then click on Assignments up at the top of our course page, an Idea Worksheet, to actually submit your responses to the questions. You want to submit before 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, October 24th. And I will then get back to you with my comments on your ideas. So you want to make sure you read those comments because they'll help you in writing your rough draft. So in week 11, I'll ask you to upload a copy of that rough draft in progress. It doesn't have to be finished, but it should be in progress of the research paper. And that's due before 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, the 3rd. So this is kind of an odd date, Wednesday, the 3rd. And the reason for that is to give me enough time to read them all and respond to them all. So you'll click on Assignments, and then you'll look for rough draft of the research paper. Aim for at least 2 pages. Obviously typed, double-spaced, Times New Roman 12-point font. Note that a draft less than 1 full page doesn't give me enough material to even offer adequate feedback on. So it needs to be at least 2 pages. And if you can write more than that, that's great. I will then get back to you with my comments over the next few days, and it will be extremely important for you to read my comments and then enact them, enact the suggestions I make, every one of them, into a final draft of your paper, because not making those changes will hurt your grade. Every time I'm making a comment and offering a suggestion, that's a place where you would lose points if you don't enact the changes. And also note, 10 points are deducted from your research paper grade, and it's worth 20% of the final grade if you do not upload a rough draft before that deadline of 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, November 3rd. So very important that you upload it before that time. The only exception is if you have an official extension from me, in writing from me in an email, due to a valid, stress on that word valid, excuse. In week 12, Sunday the 14th at 11:59 p.m., the final draft of the research paper is due. You'll submit it also through the assignments tab. And 10 points, get this, 10 points are deducted from your research paper grade for every calendar day that it is late, including the day that it is due and weekends. And I do not accept the papers after 5 days. So make sure you get it in on time. The final draft of your paper should be at least 4 full pages in length. So 4 to 6 is what we're aiming for. If you go over that a bit, that's fine. But if you're under the minimum 4 full page length requirement, you will get points deducted. If you submit a 2-page, 3-page paper, you've given me half a paper, essentially. So, you might make half a grade, which would be 50, which would be an F. It should obviously be typed, double-spaced, Times New Roman 12-point font, standard margins. You're going to use MLA in-text citation and a works cited page. And the works cited page is not counted in the page count. Okay, we're talking 4 to 6 full pages of your writing and then the works cited page. Your paper should contain a total of 4 reliable sources. So note that one of these will be the text you're actually analyzing, and 2 of these must consist of a scholarly book or article. And so consider searching for critical analysis of your chosen text. The remaining 2 sources may consist of non-traditional sources like documentaries, films, newspaper articles, interviews with a writer, things like that. Be sure to incorporate quotes and paraphrases from your sources to back up your ideas. So the objective is to conduct research focused on the rhetorical and contextual analysis of a specific text that is representative of one of the time periods or genres we've studied this semester. So rhetorical, if you had me in 1010, you remember rhetoric equals effective communication. So you're going to analyze the effective communication of this writer. What did this writer do? What tools did he or she use to effectively communicate this message of this piece? What techniques? What appeals, maybe, did the person use? Ethos, logos, pathos. The appeals may not always be seen in certain text, but certainly the rhetorical techniques will be there, and contextual analysis. So I tell my 1010 students, think of context like an atmosphere that surrounds every piece of rhetoric, every bit of effective communication. So if I stood up in Birmingham, Alabama in 1850 and I declared all people are created equal and should be treated equally and there should be no slavery, what would happen to me, right? Because that's the context of those times. That's the culture of those times. It isn't good. If I stood up in 1950 in Birmingham and said that, it still wouldn't be pretty. But hopefully, if I did that today, there would be some folks who would be like, you go, girl, you preach it, yes. So that's context. What's the mentality? What's happening in the world and in that region? What's the culture? What's the context of that text? And so your paper must explore and offer an answer to the following inquiry questions at some point within the paper. So what time period and or genre does your text represent? What type of literature? What elements within that work clue you into the fact that it's representative of that time period and that genre? So what lets you know for sure, hey, this is realism, or maybe this is specifically local color realism. No, this is naturalism. These people are pretty negative here. Things don't end well here, right? This is imagism. This is representative of the Harlem Renaissance, etc. So don't just tell me, well, it was written in such and such a year. Explain to me the elements within that piece of writing that clearly connect to that time period or that genre. And then what are the author's main messages and themes in this piece? What rhetorical techniques are at work in this piece of literature? So are we seeing symbolism or metaphor, simile, the rule of three, free verse or slant rhyme or true rhyme if it's a poem? What are we seeing? And then why does this particular text have meaning? How does it make us more conscious maybe of certain philosophical ideas? And that may not always be relevant to every text that we could consider, but some of them make us think about this idea of determinism, especially if it's a naturalist writing. So this idea that if you turn 18 and you're male right at the beginning of the Civil War in 1861, off you go. Your fate has been predetermined, right? Or maybe the text makes us conscious of the idea of free will. So maybe the text makes us aware that we do perhaps have some control. Maybe it's more of an example of realism. We do have some control over our destinies. Or maybe it expresses political or ideological values like equality and freedom of speech, things like that. So to conduct a successful research paper, your paper should contain a clear, identifiable thesis, and generally that's found at the very end of your first paragraph. Paragraphs that contain clear topic sentences. So that first sentence of each paragraph is called the topic sentence, and that's going to tell us what that paragraph is going to be about. It may be sort of like a link in a chain. It may connect back to something you just said and look forward at the same time to what you're about to talk about, right? And the paragraphs need to support main points or ideas. A minimum of 4 sources need to be there, 2 of which should be scholarly, so peer-reviewed articles or books. And the other 2, one of them obviously is the text you're writing about. The other 2 can be non-traditional if you want. So you might look in the library's website for biographical information about the writer. You can find a lot of scholarly peer-reviewed works that are biography related. You can devote a whole section in your paper to the life and the work of your writer, because more than likely that writer's own life is connected to his or her work very strongly, and that writer's own background influenced his or her writing. And you also want to make sure you have quotations. You could also have paraphrases, but you must have quotations from your sources that support your points and that are cited in MLA citation and formatting, both in the body of your paper and on a separate works cited sheet. So people ask, well, how often should I quote? Obviously, you don't want your entire paper to just be quotes. We want to hear your voice too. But any point you make, you want to have a quote that supports it. And so, at least maybe 1 quote per paragraph, 1 citation per paragraph for sure. Choose a text that especially interested you, and the quality of your writing will reflect your interest with that writing and the way you resonate with that writing. So that's the research paper. Thanks for listening.